Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Verasti demonstration. It's a great privilege for us to show you what we think is a great tool solving some very important some real problems that we've seen in the SharePoint world come up. So at the moment, all the videos and microphones are muted, but if you wish to ask questions, you can do. There's a Q&A button on Teams, and you can ask those, and we'll deal with those a bit later. So let me just share my little presentation with you. Okay, so why did we even bother creating such a tool as Verasti? Well, one of the problems that we came up with or saw, and it might resonate with you actually, is the granular creation of SharePoint sites. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you can create a SharePoint site very easily. If you let users create them, you can create them from within Teams. That you can also add a template to them, which is also something that comes out of the box. You can create pages, and you can create, well, they have section templates now. So you can do loads of things. But what happens if you have a system, or you have a demand where you want to create a SharePoint site with very specific folder hierarchies for different types of departments within your organization? For example, you might say, I need to create a new SharePoint site for every single project that that comes up, but those projects must have a different set of permissions, a different set of folders, and a different set of branding for every single project. Not only that, the permissions and the shares need to be restricted for projects, and even within the project, within say a document library, only certain roles like project managers will have access to certain libraries or certain folders within other libraries, and you need to be able to reproduce this type of thing really quickly. Well, we built Verasti for the granular customization of sites. So you create a metadata repository, which we're just using a Excel workbook for, and you basically run the engine against the workbook, and it takes the metadata and creates the site from scratch potentially, or from a template potentially, or from an out-of-the-box template. And after it's done that, we have a suite of reports that we could run. Now, these are useful both to show you what's happened, although we're going to look at that interactively in a moment. But if you, for example, have a demand or requirement where somebody leaves the organization, and you need to go through an existing site creation or site collection, and you need to know how many things were shared with that person, because we want to remove the shares because they've left the company. Well, our reports do a granular examination of all folders and all files or all list items and tell you where they have been specifically shared. So as you probably know, if you've used SharePoint, there's two ways you can set up permissions. You can either break inheritance and allocate new permissions at a particular point, or you can right click on a document and you can share it. Now, the latter is more of a user-oriented share, and that's where things can get a bit hairy for site administrators, because they have no control over how many of those are actually created. And the crazy thing, which sometimes catches people, is that when you do that, or when a user right-clicks and does a share, actually what they're doing is two things. Number one, they are breaking inheritance on that item or folder or library, which means that anything in the parent folders that get changed are now, if you add a group or add a user at the parent, they are now no longer going to be reflected in any of the children. Not only that, you also get a sharing link, and you might want to be able to delete those links. There is a mechanism to do it, but sometimes you don't know even where they are in order to delete them. So we've created these reports to help that process. So what are we proposing with Verasti? We want to be able to create sites. We want to create them in the easiest possible way. We want to be able to share the site creation metadata with different people in the organization. And we want to be able to centralize the configuration of such sites rather than people having them randomly created. And that's really what Verasti was designed to do. So what are we doing with Verasti? Well, what we actually do is we can create all the navigation, we can create the permissions, we can break inheritance, we can overlay branding, all the things that sometimes are needed that you can do on a manual process. And we do so from a single Excel workbook. So you don't install, the Verasti engine runs independently and it runs off a database, but you don't install a database. It actually uses a Microsoft Excel workbook as the database, if you like, to hold all the necessary information to create the site. So hopefully you'll see in a moment, it's very, very user-friendly. Don't know why PowerPoint's decided to go backwards. You can create a site using Verasti or a site collection using Verasti and like keep it locked away from general purpose use. In fact, you could even roll up another tenant and try putting the site up to the other tenant. When you're happy with all the pages and all the libraries and all the navigation, you can then choose to deploy the whole thing into live after an authorization process. So the workflow still works, of course. We're not taking anything away from SharePoint in doing this, but we are really allowing you to orchestrate a SharePoint site or page or library creation process. And it is simply it's as simple as filling in the workbook, running the engine. And in fact, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to skip over these slides and just show you what it is in reality. Let me just minimize some stuff here. So I'm just going to share my main screen with you. So this is the Verasti workbook. As you can see, it's just an Excel workbook, and it has across the bottom or tabs which represent different parts of a SharePoint site. The apps, which are SharePoint apps add-ins, the themes, features, etc. You can see them all at the bottom. And our config sheet allows you to turn on or off different parts of the rest of the system. So the first thing I'm going to do is create for myself, I'm going to create 4 sites, 4 new SharePoint sites. One's going to be a team site with no groups, no Microsoft 365 groups. One's going to be a communication site. One is going to be a classic team site. The classic team site or the classic site is going to use template STS-0, which is actually a classical team site. And lastly, I'm going to create a modern team site with a group, and I'm going to give them these names. And because it's Excel, I'm actually creating the URLs using a bit of Excel formula there. So all I need to do is make sure that's saved and go to my config and turn on site creation mode, which has been done, and run the engine. So if I just run the engine here, it will ask me to log in to the administrator in order to the SharePoint administration URL in order to create the sites. And actually what's happening is asking me to log in here, which is authenticated. And so here it goes. It's creating the different sites. That one's been created already. That was the, if I go back to have a look at my sites, that was the modern team site with no group. The next one it's done is the 121, which is the modern communication site. Now, classic sites take a little bit longer to create. Microsoft did a great thing with the modern sites. With modern sites, you basically have got a modern site already created in the background, and it just does a few things to implement your new modern site. But for the classic sites, back in the day in 2007, 2010 SharePoint, what it's actually doing is building the site from scratch. So it puts the lists in, the libraries in, etc., which all makes it always a little bit longer to create the classic sites. But what I can do is go to the modern team site, this one here, and show you in a browser what it did. Any case, that's the one we're going to use anyway. So this is the site it created. As you can see, it's still carrying on in the background doing the classic site, and you'll notice nothing's really special. You can create these at any time. It's got, by default, the notebook is always been implemented. If I look at site contents, you get a document library, a site assets library, a site pages library, nothing in them. And that's about all you get out of the box. Notice in the background, it's already finished the classic site. Oh, yeah, classic site sometimes takes so long. Verasti just says, "Oh, we'll just let it carry on." So that's what's happening there. And the last one, which is the modern site with groups, that's been created in the background too. Right. So let's to prove this second site was created. That's the communication site that was created. And again, you'll see it has the standard things. Of course, a communication site's different because the quick launch is horizontal and not vertical, whereas in the previous one, it was vertical. Let's just try, see whether or not this is finished now. The 122, that's the 123, that was the one with Microsoft 365 groups. And you can tell because it's got conversations here. You've got this bit down here, and it was 122, which we hope is finished by now. There it is. That's the classic team site. So just a quick demonstration of creating the sites. But say you can do that in multiple ways. But anyway, but you could create 100 sites if you wanted, just with one run of Verasti. Now, what I'm going to do is take my team site group. So I'm just going to say, from now on, I'm not going to be interested in these three groups. I'm just going to process 120. And I'm going to configure this to say I'm not in site creation mode, but now I am in site configuration mode. And I'm just going to save that. So what it's now going to do is the engine is now going to process all the sites that are flagged as yes, in this case, only one of them. And then it's going to start building the entire site. Now have a look at what we're going to do. We're going to create all these lists. Some of them are document libraries. Some of them are actually lists at the bottom. We're going to create some fields in those lists. We're going to create 60 folders in the site across the multiple document libraries. And we're going to modify some of the views in the libraries. We're going to remove content types. We're going to change list titles. We're going to upload some files into the document library, the standard document library. And we are actually going to create some list items. So we're going to create some list items, which are going to be URLs. We're also going to create some site pages. We're going to create a new home page here, which is going to be made as the new home page. See, set new home page. And we're then going to lay out sections within the pages. So the new home page is going to be created. We're going to inject web parts into those pages. We're going to set up some breaking of inheritance across the libraries. We are going to set some permissions, and we're going to build some brand new navigation. And at the end, we're going to set the site logo. So all this is now going to happen in this site, which is 120. Let's just, and we'll probably be able to see some of this happening. So I'm just going to make sure that was saved and run the engine. It's now going to ask me to log in to the site I'm configuring, which is this one. And then off it will go, creating, in this case, themes. Right, so if you have a look back at the themes, it's going to implement the orange theme. So if I just press home again, see the orange themes come in already. The other thing is the notebooks disappeared, and that's because it's disabled the notebook feature and enabled the enterprise SharePoint lists feature. That's can be seen by looking at site contents and site settings and looking at site features. So then see the site notebook has now been deactivated. What it's doing here is creating folder hierarchies and creating lists. So let's just have a look at the site contents and see what's happening. It's created loads of document libraries for us, as you can see, and then it's created the folders within them. Let me just have a look at one of them. You'll see this has happened. So all these folders have been created. You'll notice also it's added a content type column, so we can change the views here. If I go back to my site contents, it's created these lists as well, and it will now start to populate them with new list items. So if I have a look at this one, for example, you'll notice it's taken the title column out. That was one of our instructions. And these are, it's created these two fields and injected or created list items, which are in this case just URLs to various places. It's, if you go back to documents, this is what it did. It uploaded some documents. And if you have a look in here, for example, sorry, in the SSV, has come from my C drive. And you'll notice the when it's come from a map drive, all the metadata is as it was on the original file. So this is 14th of August, example VLOOKUP, site definition from the 11th of August. So it's like a mini migration tool as well. It's not really designed to be a migration tool because it's really just to set something up. So if we now go back to our, there we go. We'll go back to our home page. This is my little refuge cat Tink. So this is, it's our new home page. Can you see it's got a new home page? So that was the page it created. It deployed our image web part and a few text web parts into the page. It's created this hierarchy over here of items that link back to the libraries it previously created. And then it also created this top navigation, and I've got this page called links. I just wanted to show you some features of what it did here. So it created this page from scratch. It laid out the sections in the page, and then it injected web parts. Now, some of them are pretty standard. This one's a web part against the team room list. This is the other list that it created. This is an image web part. But these are quite interesting because these web parts are quick links web parts, but they have been completely configured automatically. So I'm not just loading up an empty web part. Verasti is loading it up and then customizing the properties of the web part in order to display and end up with a finished web part, as you can see here. And another thing I just wanted to mention, you probably saw this. We have this interface is extensible. What I mean by that is that each one of these columns is a label that is converted into a property of the underlying objects that controls the system. And we do have full customization of these labels across the top. And you'll see that in some of the last tab here is called mappings. And here we have, if I just open this up a bit, this is a set of mappings that map the label that's seen on the workbook into the label that is, or the property that controls the system. So we've got a lot of customization of for any one of these. Second thing I wanted to mention is this. You'll notice that there is some square brackets occasionally on columns. This one, for example, that means that you can add multiple entries into this cell, and then use that as the delimiter between different entries. It's really shown most under group membership. So here I'm adding groups and group membership, which I'm just about to show you. So what I got it to do was create some specific groups. Let me just go back to the site, and we're just going to look at site permissions, advanced permissions. And you'll see part of what we did was create these groups. You can see them there. But we also created back here certain roles. And these are actually the new name for permission levels. So you can see these ones here, view, approve, manage. These extra ones might have a specific combination of roles, of levels that are needed to be combined. So it did those, and then it allocated some to our groups, and then it added, if we go back to our groups and just choose one randomly, let's have a look at P reporting members. And you'll notice here that it's added users, which are SharePoint users, but it's also added intra groups. So here you've got the ability to create SharePoint groups and populate them with intra groups, or even Microsoft 365 groups that they're also supported. So it gives you very granular customization. You might have noticed this column here, conditional. Now this is designed so that if you've got multiple sites, you can specify a conditional label here. Let's just put in UK here. If I put in UK here, it means that in every other tab, only the items which got UK become relevant for that site. So within the context of this one workbook, you can customize the destination to be a label. So each of these sites that are going to be processed can have a label, which means that each one of the rows in every other tab can be applied specifically to something that matches that particular label. So the folders, let me just show you what I did with the folders. With folders, it's really easy to specify three levels of folder here, because you don't have to create the previous level. You specify the deepest level. We go up to 10 levels, the deepest level, and it automatically creates the hierarchy if it's needed within a document library. Okay, so if I just go home, I just wanted to also show you our integration with things like Microsoft Forms or Workflow, Power Automate, or Power Platform. You'll notice that this site definition is called site definition demo. Now, there could be a requirement for you to build this site definition programmatically. So Verasti has an API which you can use in a C# program, and it can deal with what we call a chain. I'll show you what we mean by that by opening up our VZ config. VZ. So VZ config is another layer above the site definition. And what it allows you to do is choose different site definitions, which you can turn on or off. Now, what this means is that if you have like a library of these workbooks, Verasti will use this one to determine which of the workbooks to use. So if you have like 10 workbooks that build 10 different types of site, instead of going and having to tell Verasti, which you could do, to use a specific workbook, you've now used this system we call it VZ-config to just turn things on or off as you need them. So different site demo, different site definition workbooks. And as you can see, this particular one is just using this one, which is the one that I used earlier. But you'll also notice that it's possible to run applications before and afterwards. Can you see that? An application before and an application afterwards. I haven't enabled it in this case. What this means is that you could create a console app, use the Verasti API, and this application could actually build the site definition demo or the site definition workbook. And then the site definition workbook will therefore run on the basis of you configuring very specifically yourself. So that's one of the things it can do. And the other thing it can do is using our reports. It will, not yet, but in the next phase, it will be possible to point Verasti at an existing site and then extract the details of an existing site and reconfigure it, maybe empty. So you use an existing site, which might have been customized quite a lot, and it can be used as a template, if you like, rather than the out-of-the-box templates. It's a fully usable site in production that we can then duplicate. So that's will be coming in future releases. What have we seen? Well, you've seen a system that can both create and configure at a very granular level a SharePoint site, and we've done it so that it takes the pain out of any manual processes that might be needed to create very specific requirements. One thing I haven't mentioned that it does also do is site content types. So if you want to deploy site content types, very specific ones, into different libraries, it also deals with compliance tags and labeling on folders or document libraries, if that's necessary for your requirement. And remember, we are using Microsoft Excel for the metadata management. These can be built by us or you, shared around, and you have a way of building a very specific requirement for your SharePoint site using Verasti. We can, of course, automatically deploy it. One of the things that the VZ-config does, it actually builds a CSV file, and the CSV file tells the Verasti engine what to do. So that CSV file could be created by Power Automate or by Microsoft Forms, and Verasti will be able to pick up the resultant CSV file and just obey its instructions. What we are not done is allow Verasti just to run, because not only can it create, but it also can delete. And my final demonstration is reverting the site we created back to original. So let's do that as a final hurrah. And what I'm going to do here is, in my site definition, I'm going to invoke reverse mode here down the bottom. Now, when reverse mode is invoked, it's still going to reverse mode on the same site we've got here. And reverse mode it will undo this, because when you're developing the metadata site definition, you might want to play around, see whether something's happened or not. So let's run that. Well, before I do that, maybe I could just show you the fact that it did break inheritance on things. Let me just show you this. Under supplier management, it broke inheritance. We wanted that to break inheritance. So let's just run to site contents and supplier management. This one here, we'll just look at its settings and its permissions. So you can see we got unique permissions. So that's exactly what it did there with site management. It broke inheritance, and then it allocated various things. We've got some shorthand. Ah, yes, one thing I did forget is these are tokens. Can you see these tokens? They've got double left bracket, double right bracket, and we have an at function or an evaluation system. If I go back to the sites, when I created the site, over here we created the sites with a token, an evaluation token, we call them, double left bracket, double right bracket, and it's got at now. Well, we've put in 120 at functions, uppercase, lowercase, etc., which allow any field within the Excel workbook to be overlaid with more calculations. You could calculate it yourself with Excel, but we have our own. Let me show you what that did before I erase this site. If I go back to the site information, there we go. You'll see it actually injected today's date when the site was created there, and that was evaluating this. So it seems a bit trivial for now, you're just using at now, but any one of these, any feature, any group membership, any one of these can itself be calculated with our at function library, as you can see here. So that's another customization on the fields themselves. But what I'm going to do is reverse this. I'm going to undo all this. And if I just move to sites, that's fine. I just wanted to check config site. Right, so just save that. And I'm just going to run it again. Gives me a warning. The warning is given simply because I'm actually going to destroy the site, which is why we don't give this tool out to end users, because it is possible to run this, log into the site as somebody with authority. And what I'm doing here is actually undoing. So I'm re-enabling the default features. So the notebook gets re-enabled, the lists get deleted. And if I just take this URL back, you'll start seeing, in fact, hasn't set the home page yet. Let it just do its job. Oh, yeah, it's done. Okay, so there we go. So you can see what it's actually done on the same, it's reverted things back. If I just look to here and go to site contents, see all the I haven't cleared down, I specifically haven't done that, cleared down the documents in this case, but all the other lists have gone, as you can see, and it's re-enabled the apps. So that's a way of prototyping the site definition to make sure that you're getting the right field data in the site definition workbook. So thanks very much for attending. If there are any questions, let me just check. Oh, best practices. Is it using Microsoft best practices? So when you use Verasti, we are using, it has to be registered in Entra as an app. One of the things that companies don't like in SharePoint is the ability for SharePoint owners to almost be a free rein on their little estate. So we are very keen to take on the Microsoft best practice, which means that you have to register it in Entra as an app. And then we use something called delegated access rights, which is the combination of whatever rights you give to the app in Entra and the person who's using it. And it's that combination that lets you actually do something. So that's the new Microsoft best practice. So that's what we use rather than try to use a REST API using the old ACS access control services in SharePoint, which actually can be discontinued April next year. With regard to workflows, Thanks, Ria. It's the workflow we would use is well, of course, we're not taking anything away from the standard workflow Microsoft provide, but what we are saying is that this workflow is slightly different. We say that you need to effectively workflow the entire site, not any one component of it. So but what Verasti will do is build the site and then allow the site to be proved. And once the site's been proved, you can then take that site, maybe with dummy data, and then push it to a live environment. So that's another thing that we can do. Oh, Richard's got. I created a site in a couple of minutes. How's that compared to real life, Richard? Yes, well, I think to be honest, you can create a site in a couple of minutes in SharePoint if you're allowed to. I think what we've got here, though, is the ability to batch them up very quickly. So you could create, 20 sites. If you had 20 projects coming in or 20 requirements, you could do this process 20 times much faster than you can do the manual process of setting up a site. And of course, the SharePoint template is quite useful. They've got templates for various things. But when you need very specific branding or very specific hierarchy or specific groups or permission kinds or roles or users or group or entry groups or in your system, then this is what Verasti is there to try to help with. Okay, I think we're done with questions. Just wanted to say thank you all for attending. I hope that's given you a feel for what it can do. And no doubt you're hopefully thinking of ways in which it might be able to help out with some of the requirements that come your way.